Hello, it's Tim here from My Life Tonic, and welcome to today's episode of What's Your Tonic? So, just to explain to those people who have maybe not listened to any of these podcasts before, the intention of What's Your Tonic is to maybe introduce different concepts, different ways of thinking of things, and maybe different actions that can be implemented into our daily routine that represent small changes that can make a significant difference. And these may be small changes that require just a little bit of time and dedication and intentional thinking rather than any significant outlays. And that's very much the intention of My Life Tonic, is that we introduce a range of different tonics, something that can make you feel better, healthier, more proactive, that doesn't necessarily take a significant amount of time. Now, I'm sure we've all heard the adage that giving up is the easy thing to do. Well, in this case, actually, giving up is not the easy thing to do. And with that, I really want to talk today about whether or how or the considerations that potentially need to be taken into your thought process, if indeed you're looking either to reduce or stop giving up drinking. And I say that this from personal experience. I'm now, I think, almost 3 years or over 3 years of not having drunk at all. And there are various reasons for that, and I'll go into that in a bit more detail later on. But yeah, I've been 3 years without drinking, and to be honest, I think I really feel the benefits from it. But just as a little background of me, throughout university, love playing rugby, and maybe the after or post-match, post-training activities generally involved a fair amount of drinking, and I loved it. And that carried on through from post-university right into my mid-40s. And to be really truthful, I'd enjoy a few drinks, and it was something that I would do generally in the weekends, Friday and Saturday, but actually I'd never really thought about giving up until probably my mid-40s. And there's a few sort of times where I'd given up for a case of a month or a month and a half, not as part of a challenge or anything, but just thought, it's time to just have a bit of a detox. And that worked, and that went so far. But ultimately, it wasn't a long-term sustainable piece of giving up drinking. And so that's where my mindset, situation changed slightly in terms of what has made this now more permanent. And so over this podcast, I want to ultimately highlight some of the benefits that you might experience, why people are increasingly giving up drinking. But I want to do this in a non-preachy way. Ultimately, it's got to be either when you're ready, when the situation fits, and there will be challenges along the way. I certainly had to deal with some, I would say, almost unexpected consequences of not drinking that I then had to get my head around. So I'm certainly not going to say that giving up drinking is full of a bed of roses. There will be challenges. But hopefully, following this podcast, I can really maybe highlight some of those challenges so at least you're aware of them, if indeed it's something you're looking or considering doing. Because I know that I was taken slightly by surprise by some of the challenge, the unexpected consequences of me not drinking. So really the title of this podcast is When Giving Up is Not the Easy Thing to Do. So let's just cover off a few areas why people are increasingly considering giving up. Well, I think culturally there's been a change. So you have Sober October, you have Dry January, that people are making a conscious decision of giving up drinking for a month or so. So culturally it's in our radar, on the map, in terms of maybe having a stop and a reset can make a difference. So it's for a finite period of time. I think one caveat I would say with this potential challenge is that once you complete the challenge, either you go back to your old habits, or you actually counter all the good work that's happened over that first month or so, and then you go large for the next couple of days. So just be mindful of that. Once you hit a challenge, once you've achieved that challenge, what is the action that you do after? From a personal experience, I would say that I'm not sure I felt the immediate benefits after a month that would have given me enough motivation to carry on and to not continue or not to stop drinking. So some people, they say that it's been life-changing. Personally, it's taken a bit longer for me to recognize those full benefits of not drinking. So the temptation of doing sober October, dry January is that, you get to the 1st of Feb and you're itching to start drinking again. Or if you do sober October, then you've got the run in for Christmas, if that's kind of an environment or a location that you live in. So just be mindful of when the challenge is and what then happens after. However, congratulations for those that complete the challenge, and it's certainly a step in a different direction. But when we think about giving up drinking, what are the other benefits? So maybe that you'll notice that you sleep better. So from a health perspective, you sleep better. Maybe it reduces the level of anxiety that you experience. And also there are the other health benefits, so the reduced blood pressure. And just feeling more energized in the fact that you are sleeping better, you may be replacing the alcohol with maybe water or other drinks, then actually the body is feeling better in itself. In terms of those other physical benefits, then we could be having increased levels of energy. Your skin may feel and look better. You may start to lose a little bit of weight as well. So, there may be tangible benefits. And actually, there's nothing better than maybe receiving a compliment, the fact that, that some of the changes that you have made, whether it's over that first month period or an extended period, that it gives you ultimately a bit of an ego boost. It also gives you that sense of reward that the changes you have made an impact. But then there's also the mental health benefits that you might also experience. So having not been drinking, maybe that your mood is slightly more stable. It's you don't have the highs and lows, the hangovers, the low energy moods that I know I certainly experienced as a result of having had a few nights out. You might feel less tired as well. And then there's also the very tangible elements where you might feel that if you've given up drinking, you might feel that you've got more time on your hands, you're feeling more energized, you've spent less money. And actually also the connections that you do have are better with the people that you've been hanging out with. And, I have also got to say that, cards on the table, when I was drinking, I'd certainly enjoy it, but there'd also be a bit of an element where I wasn't remembering all of the night. So actually, having had a good night, if I can't remember the connections or the conversations I've had with people, then is that part of the evening lost? Now, these are my own personal reflections. These are certainly not judgy, they're not preachy. You may notice some of the similarities with maybe what you experience when or if you're going out. So, if that resonates with you, then perfect. When I think about having given up, it's for me, the benefits I experience certainly are being able to, wanting to get up earlier, get the day started in a more productive way, whether that's doing some exercise, whether it's just having a few moments, the fact that I can get going at the start of the week, for example, more productively. And I'm a real believer in my case that getting up early each day, Monday to Friday, for example, a good start to the day is so important for me, and then that helps set the tone for the rest of the day. Now, all of us are going to be different. It may not be something that, good morning start is as important to you, but for me, sets the tone for the day and then potentially the week and makes me more productive. So that's just something that I've noticed. Certainly as I was getting older, the hangovers were maybe lasting that little bit longer, feeling more tired at the start of the week. But as I say, there's certainly no sense of judgment. Maybe it's just about recognizing some traits or experiences that you're having. Now, I noticed, for example, that having given up after the first month or two, that there were a few challenges. And one of the challenges that I noticed and experienced was that actually getting to the end of the week, I would then be looking forward to going to the pub, catching up with some mates locally, and using that as a release. And that would help with putting into perspective, some context, any of the sort of challenges, frustrations that I might have had. And then it was just acting as a valve, a release of those frustrations. And it then helped me reset for either the weekend or the start of the week or whenever that period was. Now, I'd lost that. And actually, that was possibly the most difficult thing that I experienced, was not having that release meant that actually there were elements of pent-up frustration. So rather than being able to get rid of that stress or those frustrations that actually was building up, and that I wasn't handling that particularly well. So I would say, if you are considering giving up, just be mindful, be aware that you may have lost that valve and that you need to deal with it in different ways. Now, that only came to my notice after about 2 months, and some conversations with Shannon, making sure that that we were both on the same page and we acknowledged something that happened, and then how I deal with that and how I process that, rather than going to the pub, or actually still going to the pub but not having that release and through that relaxation. Now, I said that I gave up. I gave up in September. The reason I gave up was that I had to start going on to statins, high cholesterol, and that statins can, depending on what you have and depending on your own personal makeup, have damage or cause damage to your livers or liver. And so my liver had already shown a little bit of signs of damage. So I just wanted to make sure, going on to the statins, that I could quite clearly state and show whether alcohol was the cause or it was contributing to the cause, and that post having started the statins, whether it was the statins that was causing that ongoing potential damage or increasing that damage. Now, fortunately for me, I started the statins after almost the probationary period of that statins, had another blood test, and actually the statins were causing significant damage to my livers. Now, that is only a very personal thing. Everyone will have those different reactions, but by having given up, I could quite clearly see that for me, the statins were causing damage. So rather than having something up in the air, I could quite clearly see that it wasn't the booze and the drinking that caused the damage initially, or it caused a little bit of damage, but actually the consequence has been now that in dealing with my cholesterol, I have had to change to a different collection of drugs to manage my cholesterol. Now, for me, the easy thing would have been to say, well, actually, I can go back drinking. And actually, after that 3-month stage, I kind of thought, well, I'm on a roll here. I've got to 3 months, 90 days, whatever it is. I'm going to see how far it can go. And I'd almost been able to use the statins, my medical condition, to force or encourage me to give up. And for me, I found that really helpful. And this is maybe a second sort of watch out or observation, having given up drinking, is that when you announce to people that you're giving up drinking, 90% of the people are supportive, and they want to, and they won't, or they want to support you. They won't keep offering you drinks. They won't try and get you drunk, which is great. Ultimately, the essence, the example of a true friendship. However, the main question that they do ask is why. Now, I had a get-out clause in this case, because I had a get-out clause. Why? Health issues, starting statins. And in that respect, I believe, or my impression was, that a lot of the people then were thinking, well, one, I'm not on statins, two, I don't have high cholesterol. There was a reflection of, well, Tim has given up for X reason. And so then they were able to compartmentalize. And this is only purely my perception, so I'm certainly not judging on people's reactions. But it was that sense of, Tim's had to give up because of X. I don't need to. That's not a challenge in my life. Now, that might also be being sensitive, overly sensitive. However, they were able to rationalize why I'd given up, which I took as, I found it as an interesting observation, because within British society, a lot of us, there was a lot of drinking through our society, whether it's part of our culture, going to the pubs, hanging out, whatever. But actually, think about when someone has given up smoking, for example. People are actively congratulated for giving up smoking. Now, again, I don't want this to come across as being a bit preachy at all in any shape or whatsoever. However, it's widely recognised that smoking is damaging for our health, so people congratulate you when you have stopped. I didn't see that. I didn't receive that same sense. Nor did I really want it, but there wasn't that sense of congratulations for stopping. It was more a stop, reflect, and justify why Tim has given up. So slightly different in the way our society perceives giving up smoking in terms of, or in contrast to the way we give up drinking. Thirdly, one of the ways that I was able to continue not drinking is that a dear friend has also stopped drinking. Actually, he'd stopped a year or so before me, and his justification was it just made him feel happier. Couldn't quantify it, there was no metrics, there was no medical readings. It just made him feel happier, felt more present, and actually said it made him feel like he was being more present and almost a more engaged parent. Now, I was able to regularly contact, speak with this person on a monthly basis, not in terms of a therapy side, but, as mates, catch up. But it was one of the subject areas that if we needed to touch on it, we'd discuss it, and we'd just give each other that same sense of support. And so if, for example, you are thinking of reducing or giving up booze, if you're able to find someone that you are close to, that you can share those experiences, give a little bit of moral support, that can be a really helpful and really useful tool that you can have. So if you are thinking of potentially giving up or reducing booze, then maybe a couple of tips may help. So you've got that support network. Acknowledge that there may be some challenges ahead. Understand people's reactions to why you may have given up. For those people that want to encourage you to break your challenge, maybe that's a chance to just actually ask them to respect your choices, or actually the consequence can be that to support your objective, then it may be that they're just people that you control or reduce the amount of time you spend with, and you can be very choosy when you see them. Now, when I was thinking previously about giving up or reducing, I started to think, well, were there days that I could limit the time when I drank? And one of the options that I considered at one point was I'll drink one night in the weekend, so either a Friday or a Saturday. For me, personally, I couldn't make that work, because purely if you end up, in my mind, if you're invited to go out on a Friday and then a Saturday, for me, I would find it hard to say, right, well, I'm going to drink on one night and not the other. And the impression that you're giving your best, i.e. most fun potentially, either when you were drinking or when you're not, and how you choose between the Friday or the Saturday. Now, that's completely bonkers, by the way, because you shouldn't be invited out because you're going to be drinking or not. But that was the perception that I had, and making that choice and that inconsistency. So for me, actually now I found it a lot easier to be either all or nothing. And in this case, giving up isn't the easy thing to do, then actually it's the nothing piece, and I've got through that. So just in terms of some more tips that may help you either start to reduce or to give up would be to notice any patterns when you drink, where you drink, and with who you drink. Is there a chance, if you're wanting to reduce or stop, how you can get their support, gain their support, or even just reduce the time or the locations that you see those individuals or where you go? Can you avoid that situation if it makes you feel uncomfortable? You can, for example, set yourself goals. Now, again, the goal, the challenge, the dry January, the sober October, again, that can be a really good way to kickstart any new habit. Now, a habit, some people say it takes 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days to establish a habit. And then you've got the atomic habits that goes, it's only ever a habit if you continue doing it. So, at what point does that challenge become the new norm? And there's a story I've got of another friend who did really well. He sent me, I wasn't aware that he'd given up drinking, and he messaged me about a month or 2 weeks before he'd got to the end of a year when he was going to be having not drunk, just through personal choice. And he said, I'm going to reward myself with a nice glass of red wine, a gin and tonic, and a steak. Great, happy days. Getting to a year of not drinking is a great achievement. The only thing I was then able to suggest to him is that, well, what do you want to do after that year? Because actually, going back to the theory of atomic habits, reward yourself with positive things. By rewarding yourself with the thing that you have given up, a gin and tonic and a red wine, is almost breaking all the achievement that you've done. And having given up now for 3 years, it's going to be 900, 1,000 days. For me, I don't really keep track of the days, but what I do know is that I don't want to just reset just because I want to have a glass of wine or a beer. For me, I've made it to whatever it is, 3 years. And for me, it doesn't feel worthwhile for that one day to have a glass of champagne or wine or whatever it is, just for that one occasion to celebrate. I'm happy having the sparkling water variants or whatever it is, the non-alcoholic variants. So the challenge with giving yourself a goal is that once you reach that goal, what do you then do? Now, it's all up to people. People may feel that they want to. That's fine. But actually, sometimes when you've got that far, why break that achievement by rewarding yourself with the things that you've given up? What you could actually do is reward yourself with something else. Think of the money you've saved. Think of the new activities you may have done, or the connections you might have generated or deepened with the people around you. So it may be that, go for a nice meal but without the booze, or reward yourself with a weekend away, or just hang out with your mates more. So just be mindful of goals. In terms of another tip that I find can help if someone is looking or considering giving up, is there are plenty of alternatives. So when I was growing up, there was one brand in particular that was, or only brand, that was a non-alcoholic beer. And from memory, it tasted pretty awful. We are so fortunate. You've got, the Guinness Zeros that is great out of a can. You've got loads of IPAs and lagers increasingly on tap in bars and restaurants that you can have as a non-alcoholic alternative of beer. And I always used to think that if you're the non-drinker, the designated driver, that it would be quite clear, because you'd either be sitting there with a Coke or an orange juice or a water, and it was just obvious. And that in itself can make you feel as if you're sort of noticeable in your absence of drinking. Certainly by just being able to stand around with a group of people in a pub or a bar with a pint of non-alcoholic drink, whatever it is, kind of feels more, less obvious. And so I find that helps to make other people feel at ease. If you're thinking about, that home environment, another choice or option can be to help remove that sense of temptation. So not stocking up, not having the wine in the fridge or not having the beer, and actually putting the non-alcoholic version into the fridge. So I know Shannon and I, we would enjoy a bottle of wine or something in the evening, or a beer or whatever it is. We now stock, or we have at home, the non-alcoholic gins, the non-alcoholic beers. So, if Shannon wants to have a beer or a wine, she can do. I'm more than happy to have that non-alcoholic variation. I mentioned earlier about support. Support can be really important, just like someone to bounce from ideas from and share those experiences. I've also mentioned rewards. And then also, lastly, I've previously had a podcast about reframing. Well, by not drinking, what else? What are you able to do? Or what else can you do as a result of your not drinking? And I think that's maybe one way to think about it. The energy, getting up, being productive, exercise, the more consistency in your moods, not feeling those highs and lows, those drinker's remorse, those hangovers, whatever it may be. So I really want to make sure that when someone or you are thinking about giving up drinking, that you're aware that it is going to be a challenge, but it is something that is achievable if, one, you're aware of some of the pitfalls that might arise, but also you also have the support around you, the alternatives, the rewards, the opportunities to get more and realize the benefits of maybe not drinking. So just as a sort of a summary of the benefits of not drinking, it can free up time, you can save money, you can be more active, your emotional and mental health can improve because you don't have those highs and lows, you're not feeling tired, you're getting better sleep, and therefore you can then also be more productive and do exercise. But then it's also really important that you then are still able to maintain your connections with the people that are important with you or for you. So I still go on the yearly boys ski trip. I've made it through the sort of celebratory cycles throughout the year. So I found personally, having got through Thanksgiving, because Shannon's American, got through Christmas, got through New Year, got through birthdays, that actually I've proven to myself that I can do it, and that it's not critical to a good evening out of me not drinking, and that indeed it is possible. I'd also give you just a few more tips that, yes, if you're not going to be drinking, there is a chance that you're potentially going to become the designated driver. That's fine. But also lay it out that for those people that you are driving, maybe if you're going to leave at 10 or 12 or 1 o'clock, then actually you do so with the expectation that you're going to leave at the time that works for you, and then you haven't become the designated driver that has to bring people back. So they can enjoy the benefits of you not drinking to get the journey there, but there's not that need to stay right to the end if those people are caught in the moment. So that would be certainly one thing that I would remember. You can still stay out. I mean, I've recently been away and there are a few late nights out clubbing. Within the right environment, I can stay out with, people who want to be out until, the club shuts. For me, what was really important is the environment that you're in, the people that you're with, actually the close friends that you're with. And actually, I'd like to think that the close friends that I've been with make it feel comfortable, make it feel easy, that then it is possible for me to stay out with them to the end of the night. So it doesn't always happen, but just be mindful that it is possible. And also you'll probably get up feeling slightly more energized and less shattered and be able to get on with the rest of your day. So I've probably gone on for a bit longer than I thought, half an hour, a bit longer than some of my other podcasts, but giving up drinking, or reducing your drinking is possible. Put the right frameworks in place that makes it most likely or possible that you can indeed stop or reduce your drinking on an ongoing basis. And you know what? If you do end up having another beer at some point, reset the clock, start again, learn from those differences. This isn't something that you have to do unless, of course, you've been medically advised to. You might just notice the benefits of not drinking. For me, last point, is that I don't feel that I noticed the benefits after 1 month. I wasn't able to say that I thought it was life-changing, that I was never going to stop. It took longer for me to realise the benefits, the energy levels, the productivity. So, just be aware that, some people might find those experiences more immediate. If you're going to stick at it, you might then have to stop and reflect at certain times just to see whether you feel the benefits of it. Be kind to yourself. Notice what's working, what's not. Make the changes if you want to, that you think will make the difference. If you have any thoughts, comments, recommendations, your own experiences, feel free to share on the messages on this podcast, or do get in touch. More than happy to discuss people's experience with you. And if you need that support, certainly do get in touch. So if you're looking to give up or reduce your booze, good luck. Hope this podcast has given you a bit of an insight, a bit of support, things to be aware of, and potentially how to do it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. As ever, if you want to get in touch, please do, or subscribe. I'm increasingly putting more of these podcasts together to help share my own personal experiences and also share different life tonics that can make a difference to the way we feel, our productivity, and our daily routine. Thanks for listening.